A few years back, I was sitting down for a songwriting session with a buddy of mine who has a toddler at home. And when I asked about his little boy, my friend just shook his head. "He's about to drive me crazy." Well, it turned out that his little boy was going through that phase where he asked what felt like 100 questions a day. And no matter how thorough your answer was, the kid already had his follow-up question prepared. Why? Why? And that made me think of a 5-year-old boy named Johnny. Now, to meet Johnny, we need to go back to the mid-1990s when I was living in the tiny little town of Rogers, Ohio. Rogers is located near both the Pennsylvania and West Virginia state lines, but it's far enough out that no one's going to be delivering a pizza to your house. Rogers has one stoplight, one gas station, one grocery store, and one restaurant. But they had 2 churches, Rogers Presbyterian and Rogers Methodist. But the Presbyterian church had closed and had boards on all the windows, so everybody who was going pretty much went to the Methodist church. Rogers Methodist was your typical white wooden country church with a steeple on one end with entry doors at the bottom and a bell up top that they rang on Sunday mornings. Now, at the time, they did not have a piano or an organ. They didn't have anything against them, they just didn't happen to have one. So I began to use my guitar in services on occasion. So when they were looking for someone to lead the music at Vacation Bible School, I was pretty much elected by default. Now, if you are familiar with Vacation Bible School, you will recognize this schedule. The kids are in classes according to age in the first part of the morning. This is followed by the all-important snack, and then all the kids join me in the sanctuary to work on the music part. Now, the idea was we'd work on the music a little bit each day, and on Friday morning, the kids would put on a concert for the parents. And the other big event we had planned for Friday morning was an interactive version of the story of Jesus calming the storm. Well, it's the first day of music. The kids are filing into the sanctuary. I'm up front, double checking that I have everything. And I'm also keeping an eye out for Johnny. Johnny was a new kid who had joined our kindergarten class, and the pastor had asked a couple of us to keep an eye out for him. In the end, I heard Johnny before I saw him. I hear this little whap, 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 whap that turned out to be the sound of little red tennis shoes flying down the main aisle of the church toward me. And I looked up just in time to see this kid take his last 2 steps and launch himself airborne in my direction. I had a moment where I'm trying to save my guitar and my neck and at least break the fall for this little kid. In the end, all 3 of us were just fine. The kid made a perfect landing, wrapped his little arms and legs around my left leg, and just hung there, kind of like a tree frog. And everybody clapped. And I looked down into these big brown eyes and this head full of curly hair, and I said, "Hello, Johnny." And he just grinned right back up at me, and he said, "Guitar man." Well, we made Johnny's flying leap into a ritual that week. That's the way we started music every day. And now that I had my guitar out of the way and I was expecting it, I actually looked forward to it. The kid was amazingly light, but he had this air of fearlessness about him that seemed bigger than he was. Johnny's story was a sad but not unusual one. His dad was in state prison on some drug-related charge. His mom had just begun rehab in Youngstown, Ohio, so Johnny had come to live with his Aunt Patsy in Rogers for at least the summer and possibly longer. Now, at the end of each day, the pastor held a short debriefing. What's working, what's not, what's on tap for tomorrow. That week, every meeting had at least one Johnny story. My personal favorite was the day that Johnny bit a little girl in his class. It was on the arm, and he did not break the skin, but when they asked him why he was mad at the little girl, he said he wasn't mad at her. He just wanted to know what she tasted like. Well, all right, it's Friday morning. The music part came off without any major glitches. And we started on the story of Jesus calming the water. Now, for this, Walter Ledbetter had loaned a John boat, this big, flat-bottom fishing boat. And they brought it right into the sanctuary, had it up front in front of the very first pew. And the whole thing is up on cement blocks. And they had these two poles coming out the back where one of the adults could use to literally rock the boat and simulate rough waters. They tried it with one of the teen volunteers the first night, and he dumped half the disciples into the Sea of Galilee. So we made that an adult task. And we had two teen volunteers reading from a script that had built-in cues for all the other kids. So when the reader said, "and the wind blew," well, all the kids would wave their arms and make wind noises. And when the reader said, "and the lightning flashed," some of the bigger kids in the back would turn all the lights in the sanctuary off and on and off and on and off and on. And when the reader said, "and the thunder rolled," well, that was my kids. I had all the little kids, and including Johnny, and we had this big piece of sheet metal hanging there. And when they gave us our cue, all my kids commenced to banging on it with these padded drum mallets we got out of the preschool class. It was glorious. The only real job I had was getting them to stop banging on it after a little bit. Well, it's Friday morning. The story is going great. Everybody is into it. Outside, real live thunderstorm. That just added to the drama. Now, when the reader said, "and the wind blew," well, the wind was pounding the rain against the windows of the church. And when the reader said, "and the lightning flashed," real streaks of lightning were mixing with the flickering lights. And when the reader said, "and the thunder," boom, this big clap of thunder shook the entire church and knocked out all the lights. Chaos all over the church. Kids were screaming. Teachers were calling out to classes. Parents were calling out to kids. Well, they got the lights back on pretty quickly, and things calmed down. One blessing, in the middle of all that commotion, I did not have to worry about where Johnny was. As soon as that clap of thunder hit, he wrapped himself right around my leg again. But this was not like a tree frog. No, this was more like a frightened bear cub high in a tree. The pastor invited everyone out to the kitchen for cookies and punch, and as they filed out, I just kind of stood there with Johnny locked around my leg. And when they were out, I got him up on the pew beside me, and I said, "that was kind of scary, huh?" And Johnny nodded. For once, that air of fearlessness was just gone. He seemed smaller somehow. And I thought about trying to finish the story of Jesus in the storm just so he'd know everything came out all right. And I thought about trying to connect what he was feeling with the fear the disciples must have felt. But in the end, what I said was, "Do you need a hug?" Johnny didn't say anything, but he scooted over and pressed hard up against me. And I put my arm around him, and we sat just that way, until it was time to go home. After that, I mostly saw Johnny on Sunday mornings. But he and his Aunt Patsy came out to the farm a couple of times. He loved to chase the guineas and play with the baby goats. But then one Sunday I came in and Johnny was just gone. Patsy said he was back in Youngstown with his mother. And not long after that, I took a job in South Florida and moved away from Rogers. The last update I had was that Johnny had graduated from high school and had joined the Army. So I'm in that songwriting session thinking about my buddy's little boy and all these questions. But mostly I'm thinking about Johnny and all the questions he must have had and all of the whys that no one could answer. And in the end, I realized that without Johnny, I could never have written this song. My boy said, "Dad, I've got some questions. I'm so glad that you are here." His little face was worried. I could almost see a tear. Why do people say goodbye and leave us all alone? Why doesn't everybody have two parents and a home? Why did it rain on Sunday when we were going to the park? Why do I think of scary things sometimes when I'm in the dark? And I said, God wants us to grow. That takes sunshine and some rain. If we want the joy in the lives we live, we must also take the pain. If you don't know the ache of a broken heart, you can't know when love is real. I know it's hard to understand, but that's the deal. Dad, I've got some questions. I'm so glad that you are here. Why does my birthday last one day when I've waited one whole year? Why are some people hungry when there's food in the grocery store? Why are there storms and floods? Why do people fight in wars? Why doesn't Tommy like me? I just want to be his friend. Why does heaven have to wait until the very end? God wants us to grow. That takes sunshine and some rain. If we want the joy in the lives we live, we must also take the pain. If you don't know the ache of a broken heart, you can't know when love is real. I know it's hard to understand, but that's the deal. Love the people around you. Take the time to hold them close. Maybe the people that hate you are the ones that need love most. Learn to listen from deep inside when you don't know what to do. And know that no matter what happens, your daddy still loves you. Now my boy is a grown man, and he shipped off to Iraq. The only prayer I can say anymore is, dear Lord, bring him back. Lord, I've got some questions. I'm so glad that you are here. Thank you.